Infinity is just that limitless quality of the mind. And within that limitless quality, everything arises. If we talk about space, we think it's infinite. And our mind is often compared to space. There's gonna be an end. If there's an end, there's a beginning. If there's one universe finishing, there'll be another one starting.
If you're outside the room there eating dessert and talking, please stop. Come in here and sit down and we'll start the program. Now, please. They're not going to sit down. Okay. Well, I want everybody in before we do this. For those who are already in the room, I'm Dick Tauber. I'm formerly of CNN, where I worked for over 32 years. I am presently, well, we had our moments. Presently, I am the Vice President of Programming for SSPI Southeast, and I'm also a manager on the SMPTE chapter board here in Atlanta. And I try to help organize programs like this, which is fun and interesting. But before we begin tonight, and before bringing this evening's special gathering for the Teleport of the Future, I want to make special mention of Crystal, our program host and sponsor. Okay. The not-for-profit organizations that are here tonight, and that I guess includes the ones I've mentioned, and TAG and others, they present tonight here. They've often called for help and assistance in support of the various programs and events that they have, and Crystal has always stepped up to the plate and to make certain that the functions can take place and that they're successful. And I think we can tell by, at least from the venue, that that's true this evening. And also from at least from the panel that we have put together, that they put together, and everything else, the organization to get this done, the PR, I think it's all been terrific. Tonight is no exception regarding this consistent help and cooperation. And for all of us here, I want to thank the CEO, Roger Franklin, and especially his excellent Crystal team for putting this evening's program together for us to benefit and enjoy. So please join me, now we're coming. Please join me in expressing our gratitude to Crystal and the organizers for all their hard work and dedication for our industry. Yes, go ahead. Okay. And now, Robert Bell. Robert Bell is Executive Director of the Society of Satellite Professionals International and the World Teleport Association, where he is responsible for the programs, finances, and operations of both organizations. Under his leadership, SSPI has introduced new and exciting programs focusing on advancing the teleport and satellite industries, workforce, practices, while promoting the enormous contributions of the combined infrastructures and scope of satellites and teleports and their effect and impact on the world economy, governance, human welfare, and peace and security. His team has also established effective partnerships with educational institutions and associations to attract young people to careers in these two important businesses that we know about, and operating so successfully in the space-related functions today. Under Robert's leadership, WTA has published a unique series of research reports on the business, technology, and operations of satellite service businesses, and they range from how-to guides to strategic forecasts of major changes in the industry. WTA's most recent program is Teleport Certification. That was launched at last year's IBC in Amsterdam, which provides independent validation of the quality of a teleport operation from facilities and technology to operating procedures. A frequent speaker and writer on satellite topics, Robert has contributed significant content to Via Satellite Magazine, Satellite News, Asia Pacific Satellite Magazine, Satellite Executive Briefing, and Telecommunications. And he's appeared in segments of ABC World News and the Discovery Channel. Robert is the researcher and writer who produced WTA's The Teleport of the Future report, which if you haven't read, you should bug him and get it and read it, which is actually our topic for tonight. It is certainly my pleasure to introduce Robert Bell, so please join me in welcoming Robert as the moderator of this evening's program. Robert. Best introduction you've had in a long time.
That's a better introduction than I'm going to get when I'm dead. That was awe-inspiring. Unfortunately, you also said pretty much everything I was going to say for the next few minutes, so really, it's going to be a very short night. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to this event. This is the lifeblood of a lot of what goes on in the satellite industry. You wouldn't think so, right? You'd think it was about something else. But it's actually the people coming together, very often stepping across the organizational boundaries and the departmental boundaries to accomplish something unique. And certainly that's what our industry does every day. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is I'm going to tell you a little bit about SSPI, the Society of Satellite Professionals International, because people don't necessarily know the latest things going on, and some of it, I have to say, is kind of cool. And then I'm going to spend a few minutes after that telling you about some high points from this Teleport of the Future report that we did, which will serve as an opening to Roger Franklin, who's going to be leading a very interesting panel on the topic. So without further ado, let's talk about why SSPI. Well, one reason why SSPI is because you can meet some really cool people. This guy you're not going to be able to meet quite so easily as you used to because he's dead. But while he was living, he was, in addition to being a global figure, he was also the charter member of our Satellite Hall of Fame and allowed us to name him Chairman Emeritus of our society. So we're very proud to be able to claim that. But the reason that I think SSPI is important is not just because they pay me for it, but also because it's on a mission. It's on a mission to make the satellite industry one of the world's best at attracting and engaging the talent that powers innovation. And I'm going to keep using those two words, talent and innovation, for the next couple of minutes, because innovation we talk a lot about. We don't tend to talk so much about the fact that innovation is the product of people. People working together effectively, usually in a smart organization. And so if you boil it all down, we'd like to make this industry a lot smarter because it faces competition that it's never faced before in history.
Take a look at that slide.
Well, okay, you know, what can I say? It's not my slide. It was done by the team back at home, and it's really not any good. If you could tell him to go to the next slide, because Dix doesn't like that slide. So can we go to the, hey, there you go. Is that better? Thank you. Okay, good. This is why everybody knows and loves Dick Tauber. Okay, if you don't know us, we're the largest membership organization in the industry. We're about 4,000 members, got about 50 sponsoring organizations, and people just in 40 different nations around the world. We have regional chapters and affiliates in the US. You're at the meeting of one of those here in the Southeast, in Europe, in South America, Africa, and Asia. And we put on a lot of business networking events because, again, this is where things happen that would not otherwise happen in this business. And they are technology briefings, and they are facility tours, and they're peer education of all kinds. And it's a very unquantifiable value, but it's an enduring one, we find. We manage a portfolio of unique programs that we think are all about this mission that I outlined to you. And we call them the Next Generation, Leaders Quest, the New Century Workforce, and Better Satellite World. And I hope in the next minute or two you'll see that they're all part of a whole that is frankly becoming increasingly impressive. Our Next Generation program is about, if you ask people what does SSPI do, they'll tell you we put on a big party in Washington and we give out scholarships. That's the two things people will, if they even know us, is what they'll tell you. Well, those are both true, but in the last 15 years we've put out about $1.3 million in educational investment, and that includes staging competitions for university student teams to get them excited about satellite. You may find this hard to believe. I found it hard to believe, but I go to a lot of these student events, and you ask these graduate and undergraduate students who are space crazy, what are you going to do with you for a living? And they say, well, I might work at NASA, or maybe JPL, or I'll teach at university. And I say, that's interesting. Did you know that there's a 100 billion plus industry that's looking for people like you? No, what is it? Satellite. Oh yeah, oh yeah. So we're going to this target-rich environment and telling the satellite story and getting young people excited. These competitions help do it. Our current one is solving the space solar power puzzle. Not that we're going to do that, but we're going to engage young people in an exciting project and teach them something about satellite while we're doing it. We fund free SSPI memberships. We give out scholarships. We do that for satellite-related education. We hand out travel stipends to get young people to come to events that they're never going to get into otherwise. And great companies like Access Intelligence just gives away a lot of free stuff to students to get them there. And we connect student groups who are focused on space to mentors in our society. Because again, that one-on-one relationship can be so powerful. So that's what we do to sort of get the next generation to take a look at our industry. And we need to do this because, as the chairman of one of these student organizations memorably said in a panel session I was honored with, she said, you know, Google's on campus and Facebook's on campus. Where's the satellite industry? Good question. Leaders Quest is the name we give to basically what we do in the award area. We identify current leaders of this business, sometimes very famous ones, sometimes ones that hardly anybody knows about, but when they learn what they've done, they're in awe. We also identify future leaders, people who we think are coming up in this industry and are going to make a big, big impact. And we don't just identify them and give them an award. We spend a lot of time interviewing them. We want to learn, how did you do what you did? How can other people learn from your example and make it a personal, learn something personally that they can take into their career? And so, we're great. We love having big famous names up there like Thompson and Dankbird and Horowitz. We also love having names that you haven't heard from yet, like Weber and Field. These are really exciting events, and they stir a lot of emotion in people. our next New Century Workforce project is all about raising the game in talent management. Again, if we're not on campus, we're not recruiting, and if we're not, this industry has a problem. It tends to poach qualified and experienced talent from each other instead of building new talent. And that's a habit we have to change, because there's a lot of new talent out there and we need it very, very badly. So we do a multinational study with Korn Ferry on employment trends and hiring, training practices and so forth to raise the awareness of this topic that never gets discussed. We're about to start a webinar series for everybody on just the issues of your career, talent acquisition, and retention. We're about to launch our first recruiting mission to a student, and we're going to bring a bunch of human resources managers and let them loose in this field of 300 young people. Why should you go to 15 or 20 or 30 universities when the best ones all come to this one event? Simple stuff, but we think it'll add up. And then my own personal favorite, the Better Satellite World Campaign. This is a fun thing we do. This industry has an interesting problem. It's really, really good at what it does, and it's completely invisible. Most of what it does is literally out of sight, right? And nobody knows it exists. Nobody knows that this talks to a satellite. Everybody here knows this talks to a satellite. Very few people outside of this room know that they do it. So that's why when we go to WRC, we get our asses handed to us, because the people who make this, everybody knows them and loves them. So we think this is an extremely important issue for regulatory reasons. We think it's an extremely important issue for talent attraction reasons, because again, they can't come work for us if they don't know we exist. But we also think it's a very important campaign for the future of our revenue stream. The one thing we really, really know is that we want to sell to a whole bunch of customers who don't currently buy satellite. Right? That's what all the new excitement is about right now. Selling satellite to folks who've never bought it before, whether they're in their car or in an airplane or whatever it might be. And they can't buy from us if they don't know we exist. So this campaign is all about letting them know not only that we exist, but the entire world runs on our technology. So we launched it about 1.5 years ago. We've gotten a great set of media partners who help us push out the message. We've gotten companies who are taking our content, because basically we tell exciting stories about satellite. And I'll show you one of those in just a second. And companies like Intelsat are turning around and using it to help sell their own products. And one of my friends in this industry, Joe Amore at Microspace down in North Carolina, is one of our sponsors, even though they're a small company, because he said, this is great for me. I can take this to one of the people I'm trying to sell who doesn't know what I'm talking about and put this video up, and they'll go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. So we're generating about $300,000 worth of in-kind value from our media partnerships, just free promotion for this industry. We're putting out a lot of great stories, and if the technology works, back there they're going to push a button, and I'm going to show you one. Could you roll the video, please?
2010, it was broadcast to 204 countries.
3 billion people saw it in 2014, when it earned more than $4 billion US. What is it? The World Cup. That distinctive ball made its debut at the 1970 World Cup. They needed the right design to show up clearly on black and white TV, so they borrowed one from a satellite called Telstar. Smart move, because you couldn't watch a minute of World Cup action without satellites. Satellite is what gets the live play from stadiums to your home or favorite sports bar. Satellite can go anywhere on Earth fast. It can handle big loads of content without breaking a sweat. When passionate fans are watching, that's the reliability that you need. And satellite is still the cheapest way to get TV to millions of people at the same time. That's why nearly every TV show spends time on satellite, bringing you the news, entertainment, and sporting action you don't want to live without. Your world better with satellite. Brought to you by the Society of Satellite Professionals International, with the support of Arabsat and ASC Signal.
And yes, I would be remiss if I didn't say you too can support this campaign. But an example, right? It's fun, it's funky, it's quick, it's easy to digest, and it'll tell a lot of people things that everybody in this room knows, but your customers and the people you want to hire and the regulators you're dealing with may not know it. So that's us. And some people have said some important people have said some nice things about us, and we appreciate that. Whether it's Pradman Kaul calling us the place that connects, that represents the whole industry, or Serge Van Herk at New Tech talking about connecting all the different centers, like here in Atlanta, with others, or Dave Myers at DataPath saying that we're the only people really focusing on making sure we get our share of this global tech talent pool, I should say. So that's it. If you're not already a member, if your company's never sponsored us, become one of those things. Join the industry's biggest professional society. That's just the simple pitch I'd give you. It's a great place, and there's a lot of good stuff to do here. So that's the end of the SSPI part of the presentation. And now we're going to turn around, and I'm going to take my hat and take it off and put another hat on and tell you about the World Teleport Association's Teleport of Tomorrow. Before I do that, any quick questions about what I just said? Anybody just... I've seen a few people out there smiling and nodding and taking notes. I appreciate that. Okay. This is all just the warm-up act. Let's see. Let's go to the top of this thing. There we go. Okay. In December of last year, and I just decided this was important enough, so I did it myself, we published a study called The Teleport of Tomorrow. And we did that because after doing a lot of research reports and talking to people, it became obvious that the business as we knew it had always been changing, right? But the pace of change was about to accelerate enormously. And so the question is, how, if you're running one of these businesses, can you have a reasonable expectation of having a business 5 years from now, of having a profitable business? How do you keep change from cutting the legs out from underneath you and, in fact, get ahead of it and learn something and do things that nobody else has done before? So the report asks the simple question, what are the characteristics of a winning teleport operating company in 2020, 5 years from when we published? And I have to say, this thing provided me some of the most interesting conversations I've had in several years. The people that we interviewed for this report, and we do this by interviewing people who we think know, are really thinking about this problem and trying to come up with the best answer. So just a few highlights, because again, we have a panel talking about this. One of our respondents said mobility is the fastest growing segment today. It's going to accelerate with the spread of HTS. So we're talking about maritime, we're talking about aeronautical, land transport. We're maybe even talking about cars. So finding new segments is going to be key. And that was a takeaway that came up over and over again in this thing. If we're used to selling to broadcast, if we're used to selling to oil and gas, if we're used to selling to some enterprises, although most think that we're in the voodoo business, all those established markets are going to be there, though they're probably not going to grow a whole lot. Our whole future depends upon finding new segments and making them understand that satellite is the best thing that's ever happened to them in terms of their applications. So that growth is pretty significant. Everybody knows this kind of Cisco figures, but global IP traffic is going to pass a zettabyte threshold at the end of this year. A zettabyte, I think, is 1 billion megabytes, or is it 1 million megabytes? It's a big number. It's a lot of traffic. The interesting thing that came out from NSR earlier this year was they see fixed satellite data traffic from this zettabyte revolution growing at 29% over the 5-year period, compared with 23% for overall traffic volume. So actually, there's this interesting thing where that traffic's going to be leaning in the direction of satellite a little bit, which is a great opportunity. Why? Because of the massive gains in throughput that we're going to get out of high throughput satellites. All of them, the GEO birds as well as whichever one of the LEO birds actually make it into the air and actually end up becoming a good model. And one or two of them will. And they're going to reduce the cost of satellite by so much that demand's going to skyrocket. It's the MCI, international telephone model, right? You lower the price and demand explodes. And it's not all data. One of the things that came out of this that I appreciated was video's going to be there too, but the impact of this revolution on video is going to be a little more subtle. It's going to create a set of new options, and not all video is going to travel over the internet. A lot of it's going to travel the way we're used to traveling it. It's going to go over a whole bunch of different paths, and satellite's going to be at the table doing something that no other technology can do. Another great quote from the study, the key driver is the amount of capacity coming online from high throughput satellites. It's going to drive down those prices in the market. The market's going to struggle to absorb the capacity. And here's the real kicker. We're going to have to support more customers on less revenue per customer. And I thought, whoa, okay, that sounds like a recipe for disaster, right? Except that there's this little industry called the consumer electronics industry that's been doing it for 30 or 40 years. Every year you pay less for the stuff and it does more, and they're still profitable. So it can be done, it's just a challenge, particularly for a business that has always kind of run on the scarcity model. So what's ahead for us? What are the challenges according to the people we talk to? Well, network management, it's going to go massively more complex, it's going to involve many, many more companies and partners in the mix, and there's going to be an interesting requirement that comes out of that. According to our respondents, partners in this mix are going to have to give each other visibility into their networks. Never been done before. And not total visibility, but enough visibility so if I'm responsible for an end-to-end system, I can get my problem solved without having to call you and then have you go through your layers of management and the way we do it now. I have to be able to see it and fix it. Economies of scale, of course, always important in business, are going to become massively more important. They're going to become the competitive advantage. That's going to drive acquisitions. It's going to drive a lot of strategic partnering. One of the respondents said something I loved. He said, our future is getting inside the telcos and convincing them that we're part of their solution. Why? Because they have 10,000 salespeople. I got 15. I need them to be selling for me. I thought it was a great way of putting it. The other side of that is it's going to drive a tremendous amount of automation. The other way that, in addition to scale, the other way we get scale, I should say, is by automating. Unfortunately, reducing the number of people required to make something happen, but getting tremendous efficiencies in our business. And finally, this was one I really didn't expect. They said we're used to custom building all our infrastructure in the satellite. You get a customer, you put up an antenna, or maybe you add them to an antenna, you put all the gear in, and the universal conclusion of our respondents was that model's not going to work. Because we got to get service up and running so much faster. So we have to come up with a way to create an all-purpose teleport infrastructure that we can very quickly adapt to the need of the next customer, which, again, very different model. And so what you end up with is this interesting, like economists like to say on the one hand, and then on the other hand, well, on the one hand, teleports need to develop a lighter technology footprint, right? Because they're going to be using third parties for more and more of their technology and their connectivity, which implies a lower CapEx, lower capital expenditures, and a higher operating expenditures on highly skilled people, third-party services. But on the other hand, the HTS capacity explosion is going to require teleports to rethink and rework their existing infrastructure, which means they're going to have to continue to put money into their infrastructure just in different ways. As one of our respondents said, I'm probably not going to buy another antenna, but I'm going to buy a lot of other stuff to make it work. And the winner is, it's the one who can turn the high throughput satellite threat into the high throughput satellite opportunity. And what does that mean? Well, NSR did this interesting prediction. They said that only 20% of the high throughput capacity will be used for the typical applications in the teleport world, the enterprise, government, broadcast, mobility, and so forth. But that 20% will generate 80% of the revenue. That's a nice place to be if we can just be smart enough to adapt to that world. So that's the end of that's the end of my little introduction, and it gives me great pleasure in turn to give the floor to a friend and colleague named Roger Franklin, who's known to most of you. If you don't know him, Roger is, well, he's a software engineer. Roger is the creator of new technologies. Roger is an advocate for the industry and a pretty tireless one. He's a volunteer of his time and expertise through this chapter at SSPI, as a member of the board of WTA, and as a member of a lot of other organizations that I don't feel I have to advertise because they're not mine. He's also one of the most fair-minded and generous men that it's ever been my pleasure to know. So, and by the way, he's the president and CEO of Crystal, which is a provider of monitor, management, and control systems that bring a new level of intelligence to the business of content contribution and delivery. So without further ado, Roger, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Robert, and all the information. You can keep that. Okay. Well, I'm going to jump right in and introduce our panelists. And first, George Melton, why don't you come up? George works at Turner's Teleport and is responsible for distributing just a couple $1 billion worth of video every day.
Well,
So channels like the important ones, Cartoon Network, CNN, HLN, those type of channels. And I'll let you tell me.
I try not to think about that,
Okay.
then I get all nervous, so.
Otherwise, you wouldn't sleep. Next up, we have Tom Johnson. Tom works at Intelsat and is in charge of many of their operations at their teleports. And I'll give you all a chance to tell us more about what you do at each company.
Thank you, Roger.
And Intelsat's very different than Turner in that they don't produce any TV channels as far as I know, but they provide a lot of services for both video creators, distributors, as well as a bunch of data and enterprise companies. And then finally we have Alan Young. Alan's CTO at Encompass. And Encompass makes most of their revenue off of generating and originating video channels, but you don't own the channels yourselves. You do it as a service for others.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas Alan's making money on originating and distributing video channels, George is keeping the revenue flowing, but not by itself generating any money. So, gentlemen, George, why don't we start with you? Tell us. I want you to answer one question, or a couple questions. One, tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about what you do. But in the process, tell us what the word teleport means to you, because there are a couple people in this room that have not heard that term before.
Well, I'd first of all like to thank Roger for changing all the questions that we originally had in the conference call and 5 minutes ago, so thank you, Roger.
You're very welcome.
It's
Keep
always
on your
good
toes.
always good to ad lib. I'm Director of Engineering for the teleports at Turner Broadcasting. We have 2 facilities. I have 2 managers, 2 engineering managers, and each of the sites have, one site has 9 personnel, which we're looking for someone right now. And we also, the other facility has 10 personnel. We distribute 80 networks for Turner Broadcasting from Atlanta. These for Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and North America. And what does teleports do? I had a financial officer at Turner Broadcasting said, give it to me in 2 sentences, what do you do? So basically, we're the extraterrestrial shipping department. We bring in raw content from the various, news, entertainment, sports, and then we shipped out, completed content. That's basically what we do.
And who do you ship it to?
Everybody, hopefully. No, customers. We ship it to cable companies,
Okay.
private users. I don't know who gets it. Just everybody.
I remember years ago when we were working with you that there were the big 4 networks were, as we were transitioning from analog to digital, those big 4 networks stayed up in analog as long as possible because there were some big ugly dishes in people's backyard that were still getting those C-band signals. So
Well, it's kind of like one of my mentors at Turner, which he passed away a few years ago, but he basically explained it to me this way, what engineering does at a teleport. He says you push the button, the light comes on, the check comes in. So that's basically what we do.
no light, no check. So, Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Intelsat and a little bit about Intelsat's business as well.
Okay, very good. I am Tom Johnson. I'm the Director of Teleport Operations. Intelsat, as most of you know, we own and manage over 50 satellites. We also manage a global fiber optic network for our various customers. And I manage the teleport side of things. We have 8 owned and operated teleports. We have 6 located in the domestic U.S., 1 in Hawaii, 1 in Germany. And in addition to those 8, we actually own or support partner teleports around the world. These are other teleport operators that we have service agreements with, and they provide the same services, commercial, IoT, TOS, on a global scale network. It's funny because when I do meet people for the first time, the general question is, what do you do for a living? And I'm always challenged, how high, how low do I sort of explain this? But what a teleport is it provides connectivity for customers, for businesses, machines to machines. And we do this by bridging that gap between the terrestrial networks that we have and our spacecraft. So it's rather unique, I think, industry that we have here, and it's I've been in it for a little over 30 years, and it's always changing, and I'm very fortunate to have been in it for so long. So,
Excellent. Yep. Thank you. Alan, how about you?
So, Alan Young, I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Encompass Digital Media. And Encompass provides tech outsource services for media companies. So, and we do it globally. So, what does that mean? It means we originate television channels, hundreds of them. We capture content from content providers, from advertisers. We put it all together to create linear channels, and then we uplink them to satellite or distribute them however the customer needs. So we have facilities in Stamford, Connecticut, New York City, Atlanta, which is our headquarters, Buenos Aires, Burbank, California, London, and Singapore. And then we have a backup Earth station in Lino Lakes, which is in Minnesota. And all of those are linked by a fiber network that we manage, so we can move content backwards and forwards. So we basically are a big content processing factory and delivery engine. And when people ask me what a teleport is, it's access to space. It's a place where you can consolidate all of your access to space, lots of terrestrial interconnectivity, lots of satellite experts, people that can fix things when they go wrong, as they sometimes do. And it's a place that is secure and is reliable. And for television broadcasters, reliability is absolutely critical. So that's one of the reasons why almost all of the teleports that we operate around the world are co-located essentially with the play-out facilities. All the video processing is done on site, and it goes across the site and then up to the satellite. If you did it any other way, you'd have to play it out, you'd have to put it on a fiber network, and then you'd have to send it to a teleport. And in many cases, that's 3 people to deal with, and lots of room for problems. So most of the teleport facilities are places that have processing hubs, a massive processing capability, and then it's straight into space for reliability and security.
Thank you. And there's a reason 2 of these gentlemen work for video companies, I would say, and the third one provides services for video companies as well. Years ago, when I'm sure the teleport name first came about, it was a way to transport telephony. Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't hear any of these guys talk at all about voice calls, telephony, any of that stuff. Whereas years ago, a majority of the traffic on satellites was voice traffic, transoceanic calls. That has evolved, and now a majority of the traffic, I believe, is video. I think video is going to stay a large portion of what happens at a teleport and what happens on satellites. Yes, satellites are used for backhaul and connectivity into cellular networks in the middle of Africa or Asia, where places are hard to reach by land. But I would say that's a minority of what's happening at a teleport. So as the industry continues to evolve and the use of satellites continue to evolve and the services at teleports continues to evolve, what do you gentlemen see as some of the new trends that are coming about that are causing you to react, change the way you do business, think about what you need to be doing differently in the future, adding on to what you're doing today? Anything. It's an open-ended question. Tom, you want to take this first and
Yep.
give us an idea of what you're seeing trend-wise?
Yeah, we've years gone by, we had a lot of point-to-point services or small regional geographic regions either for video or data. What we've been seeing over the last several years, a lot of our customers are globally part of the global economy. And so these customers are in multiple teleports. They're actually in other teleports besides Intelsat. So I think one of the challenges is supporting our customers' end-to-end services across a multitude of other service providers. They're asking us to provide real-time actions, to be flexible, to support their growth, staying ahead of their growth plans. So there's a lot of close collaboration with those customers to be prepared for their growth inside our own teleports and our fiber services and facilities. So that's a challenge that we're seeing over the last year or two anyway.
Are you able to name a couple customers and their particular business?
Sure. We have Harris Caprock, which is very heavy into the mobility, maritime. GoGo, which is again another strong mobility. I think Robert mentioned mobility is a very key high segment, and it is. So these customers, in order to be supporting their own business plans, we're actually having these forward-thinking discussions with them to help plan not only for our growth and inside the infrastructure of teleports to meet their growth demands.
So the business has kind of shifted from providing credit card transaction services on gas stations to these types of customers.
Very much. We can talk a little bit more, but there seems to be an insatiable appetite for bandwidth for all these segments. I'm sure most of you have been traveling in the air, and probably a lot of you have actually probably tied into the internet on one of the planes anyway. And so it's, again, going back to being connected throughout their services.
Good. Alan, what about some of the trends in video origination? And I know you and I have talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, the internet obviously has had a massive influence on the video business and the entertainment business in general. And so what we're finding now is that whereas satellite used to be pretty much the only way of distributing video, it's now one of the ways of distributing video. And so it's a question of integrating those capabilities. So, satellite has some, really strong characteristics when it comes to distributing video. So it's extremely reliable. That's one of the main reasons why almost all of the broadcasters in the US rely on C-band satellite, because it's extremely reliable. It's extremely efficient if you want to send the same content at the same time everywhere. But of course, the internet has changed that in that, now consumers want the content where they want, on the device they want, when they want it. And so what we find is that we have to figure out how to make satellite part of the distribution chain rather than make it the distribution chain and then watch other distribution chains come around. And that's where integrating into the broadcast operations becomes so critical. And so, for example, if you're a linear television provider and you distribute over satellite to your customers, cable operators, most of those cable operators now, when you come to renew your affiliation agreement, are going to ask you for the right to distribute that channel as an OTT channel, so they can put it on their TV Everywhere service. And that's great. The problem is that not all the content providers have 100% of the rights. So you now have this problem where you've got to take your existing channel, which you spend an awful lot of money putting together and making it look good, and you've got to figure out how to chop out pieces of content and replace it with something else. And you've got to do it at very low cost. And so one of the things that we've spent a lot of time working on is how to do that. And the advantage, of course, operating the broadcast operation with the transmission to the satellite means that we've got everything we need in one place to be able to add that capability and the distribution. And what we're finding is that we're taking a channel in, we're marking it frame accurately using industry standard SCTE marks, every element, and then using those elements to frame accurately switch out content at the facility. And so that content can then be routed terrestrially if necessary, or we could send it over satellite if more than one site wanted it. And what we also find is that Comcast wants something slightly different to what DirecTV want in terms of the way they mark the content. And so we're having to generate multiple derivative services from one main channel. The old way of doing this, in fact, some of our customers started a couple of years ago, they just had us re-originate the channels. And we love that. It's really expensive and they spend lots of money, but it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable for everyone. So we have to figure out how to do it efficiently and cost effectively. And once you've done that, of course, then people say, well, gee, can we take just that advert out? Or could we change our feeds so that instead of having national ad inventory, we could have regional ad inventory, or a mixture of national and regional, and be able to do it dynamically on the fly. So we're spending a lot of time integrating the terrestrial delivery with the satellite delivery and the broadcast origination systems.
I think that's one of the most exciting things about the future of video and the potential that this type of marking has. And it also sounds like it's the bridge to go from where we are today, traditional distribution of video, to where we will be going in the future. And just to add a little bit, it also, and one of our customers pointed this out, because we record certain program hours for them for C3 VOD. So the Nielsen, if you watch it up to 3 days after it airs live, you get the ratings credit for it. And so, today that's largely a manual process. Someone has to record it, someone then has to process it, and someone then has to deliver it. And so it can take hours to do this. So if you've only got a 72-hour window, you really want it done quickly. But one of the side benefits of marking all the content the way that we've done it, or started to do it for some of our customers, is that you can now do that automatically. You can signal the exact frame that the program hour starts, and you can signal the exact frame that it ends, and you can be transcoding while the thing's playing, so that just as it finishes, it's done, and then you just got to process it and send it. And so you can take something that used to be hours and manual into minutes and automatic, and that has enormous implications for some of our customers in terms of their revenue. Great, nice, neat stuff. George, you've heard a little bit of what Alan has said in the future. You've got companies out there like Hulu, Netflix that want to distribute channels as well over the internet, streaming wise. Is this hitting your teleport, or are you focused on, one, keeping the billions of dollars coming in and staying on the air, and looking at some new satellite and transmission technologies that just make that signal flow more efficiently and reliably?
Well, we look at, the newer OTT platforms. Of course, Turner's getting very heavily into that. They're a partner. They're another distribution, just like we're part of the distribution chain. And the more people we can distribute it to, the more people watch it, and the more money we make, and that's good. Also, really with the OTT, although someone may be watching something on their iPhone or their iPad, for example, one of the news networks, the material that they're watching very well could be coming into the teleport as one of the contribution streams from a KU truck or a flyaway. So the teleport's part of that chain, and a very important part within Turner Broadcasting. it also provides a lot of opportunities too for us to have remote monitoring capabilities and things of this nature. So it's really very exciting. It's not, we certainly don't look at it as competition. We look at it, adding to the, making more money, and that's really what it gets down to.
Good.
So it's a great opportunity.
Okay. Now I want to give a quick shout out to Steve at Turner, who's been instrumental in making these SCUDI standards happen that Alan's been able to take advantage of and use. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. And the one of the things that's always fascinated me about teleports, these antennas used to communicate to satellites can be fairly large. They don't go in overnight. There's a lot of transmission equipment, high power equipment. There's a lot of money invested in the teleports to get them going. And I've been in the business long enough to see, 30 years when I started, there were satellite antennas that had been installed for a number of years, 15, 20, 30 years, and they're still operating today. Okay? From a business perspective, if you can amortize that cost over decades, brilliant. The pace at which things are changing and evolving now, I don't know if that's the case. I suspect we're going to be seeing new video channels coming out that contain a lot of raw, high-res video content from people like you, but somebody's got to put that together in a very quick way to turn that into interesting content, video content, that somebody's willing to pay for or advertise with. How do you guys look at investing into your teleports? One, just not only to keep them running and keep doing what you're doing, but looking at what are those next business opportunities that have a 20 or 30 year lifespan that you can amortize the cost, or has the cost of investing in a teleport decreased enough to where you only have to look out for the next 5 or 10 years? Tom, can you kind of address this? And since your customers are a little bit wider than just the video customers.
Yep. Yeah, we are challenged with that. If you can imagine these 8 teleports and 40 plus where we have installed equipment throughout the world, it's a heavy initial CapEx investment. On the RF side, we actually have a end-of-life program that is constantly monitoring the equipment. It's monitoring, working with the vendors to see if they're still supporting this, and in the future when they might not be supporting this. So we actually have a program in place that will be identifying, has identified certain equipment that we are starting to rotate and roll out with some newer high power amplifiers. We're using more of the modular types versus the traditional 1-for-2 type systems or 1-for-1. The ACU tracking systems, we're looking at replacing those. We started the last year and a half, over a long period of time. So we put a lot of capital investment. What we are seeing, more to your point, Roger, is the video equipment, the data platforms, the hubs. These are new changes. They're much faster than on the RF side of the world. And so it's a challenge for us to work with our customers as well as the vendors to start to identify these early particular changes or new products or hardware out there that can improve maybe compression techniques or noise reduction. So we do have an engineering group. We have a development engineering team that's on the forefront of that. We work with those vendors and we listen to the market and our customers and what they're interested in. And so it's a process that we're evolve and changing all the time. So it's really not a static world. In the teleport, it's one of the unique sites where you are seeing all the technologies from data to video, not so much voice anymore. And the RF equipment itself basically does the same thing, but on a much smaller scale. Years ago, there were 10,000 watt amplifiers as tall as I was, okay, water cooled. Mm-hmm. And so now, we're talking to George earlier, the size of your hand, maybe a notebook, 100 watt, SSPI type of amplifier. So on the RF side, they've shrunk. The vendors, the primary vendors are produce a high quality product out there, but it is the baseband equipment that we're really challenged with to stay up with, and particularly on the forefront of our customers.
I want to come back to you in a minute to have you talk about Epic as well, because I've heard a lot about that, and I just want to make sure I understand it as well as other people.
You bet.
George, you touched on monitoring earlier, and the years ago you monitor your transmission, you look at a spectrum analyzer, you look at your confidence receiver, everything was good. I was at a customer last week and learned that one of the best tools they use to determine whether or not their TV channel made it to consumers successfully was Twitter. Believe it or not, they built a dashboard for feeds coming in from Twitter, looked at the geolocation of where the tweets came from, and people like to complain, and if they're not getting their video, especially if it's live news or live sports, they tell the world about it on Twitter. And they were able to aggregate that information and kind of bring it into a dashboard and learn some stuff from that. Is that something that, I mean, you mentioned to me earlier tonight that yes, Turner does look at the Twitter feeds. I don't know how much of that is for content. Are you going to talk to your team about how do you get some of that information to say, hey, we may have a regional problem that we don't know about?
Well, part of what, again, making teleports more efficient, we have, you don't need as many personnel because you have a lot of automated solutions provided by Crystal, of course. Don't forget my coffee cup later. And we have, for example, the Sentry system we use for our monitoring our downlink spectrums. And again, that's my second operator on duty, and he works 24/7, and he never takes a day off. That gives us tremendous monitoring tools. Hopefully, I know about an outage or an issue before someone sent something on Twitter. That's our goal. But I do know Turner monitors that. Of course, they have so many distribution platforms. In some cases, for example, in Europe, our European feed may be turned around 9 times. So it may not be the mother feed that's the problem. But
You want to be able to, with confidence, tell your boss that too.
Yes, I do, absolutely, because they are zero tolerance for any type of outages.
Right.
I will tell you that now.
Yeah, you don't want to be talking to him until it's fixed.
It's not like back in the older days. It's like, oh well, we were down 5 minutes. Now
I think
it's 5 seconds.
Turner had the sign on the wall that used to say, "It's only television."
Yeah.
That's just not true anymore, right?
No, it's not only television.
Right. Well, the other nice thing is if you can correlate Twitter data with weather data and say, oh, that's probably a downlink outage due to rain coming off DirecTV, affecting DirecTV or Dish Network, then.
Well, our teleport, looks like the Weather Channel in there with all the weather radars and different things. I mean, that's one of our biggest challenges, of course, is weather. And we've got to do something about that sun outage twice a year too. But I haven't quite figured that one out.
We may get into that later on this evening.
Yeah.
So
The solar.
that's interesting. So let me catch up where I was. Tom, Epic. Epic's a different group of satellites. And I've been told that there's fiber involved with it as well. I don't know how you get fiber to a satellite, but maybe you can help me understand that.
It's a long fiber.
That's kind of news to me. It's but it is Epic. The Epic spacecraft, I'm sure most of you have read about, is the spot beam and the frequency reuse that we're able to do. There's a unique, hopefully I don't go too far into the technology portion of it, but there is a unique feature on these spacecrafts that we call a channelizer. They were able to take from the spot beams up to the spacecraft, take a slice of that information, okay, and redivert it down into a different spot beam. So it's about a 3 to 4 to 1 frequency reuse capability. And you mentioned it earlier, I think, in Robert's slide about we're going to have more customers, but cost less. And that is the operation and the business model that we have here. So we're on the teleport side of things working supporting Epic. There are gateway beams around the different Epic spacecraft. And we usually are putting in a gateway teleport-like facility there. The unique changes at the teleport is the different IFLs. Because of the frequency reuse and the extended frequency band, most typical uplinks are as a vertical, horizontal, left and right hand pole. But here there's actually multiple IFLs, and so that's almost double the type of equipment at the teleport in order to meet that complete gateway and frequency reuse capability. So it's something that we are also standing up a worldwide network called Intelsat Flex, and it is a data broadband network that we're building worldwide, so that ahead of these customers and the demand, we're pre-building this out, so that is really nearly a plug and play for some of our customers anyway that we're expecting. So
That's very much like what Robert said in his other slide, where the infrastructure is all purpose, somewhat generic, and depending on what services, it has to evolve to fit that.
yep, exactly.
That reminds me of the old internet router in the sky, Irisberg, from years ago. Show my age a little bit. But it's instead of routing the data, you're just connecting one channel to another.
Right, exactly. Up there.
And that obviously, from an operations standpoint, that links those who fly the birds and control the birds with the customers as well as providing the service.
Yeah, we have a RF monitoring group here located in Ellenwood, and they're chartered to take a look and manage all the space segment accesses on the different transponders. So it's a new way of monitoring, getting into the actual spacecraft itself, take a look at the input levels from the ground up rather than from signals down. And so it's a new set of tools we've been applying here. We transitioned our services on IS-29E a couple months ago. They went flawless. So there's a lot of preparation work. Another unique feature we mentioned before about the mobility in maritime and the ships cross oceans, okay? And so these spot beams were actually pre-designed to go right over the Atlantic Ocean and other parts of the South America, and so that the ships can stay in connectivity throughout their crossings that they've got. So that's another unique feature.
Yeah, I guess you can also change frequency bands on the uplink and the downlink, right?
We do have the KU and the KA that is part of the frequency spectrum there. Yep.
So you can go up in C and come down in KA or KU.
I think these are KU and KA right now, yeah. But the technology could
I
be there
like
for
C-band.
That's the reliability of video.
Yes.
It's interesting because when you build out that type of network that is all purpose, the reliability for video is a little different than data. You can't just retransmit a video packet and expect it to work, because once you lose it, it's lost and the video continues. So making sure that if video can flow through it, then it's got to be a really good network. So interesting. Alan, how about you? When you're looking, I mean, one of the things I've heard is being able to offer your customers a lot more with video origination, giving them the ability where before they could do one channel, now they're doing that channel with multiple flavors, we would say. How does that change the infrastructure and the investment you look at putting into the teleports that Encompass Digital Media Services operates?
Well, I mean, I guess for us, there's an awful lot of capital that's been invested over the years in the 148 antennas that we have around the world, and the capex that we split capex into three categories. Growth capex, so we've got a new customer, we need to invest something to bring them on board. Maintenance capex, which is capex that you just need to do to keep the lights on and keep things running, and refresh capex. So this is where customers coming to the end of their contract and we need to go on. So we've just done a refresh for one of the major broadcasters at our Glenbrook Earth Station, and so we had to change out. It's not just the transmitters that get changed out. It's all of the air conditioning and all of that as well, and power, which seems to be an ever expanding requirement for more power and more UPS capacity and more flexibility there. And so we've got that infrastructure capex, and then we have the evolving requirement for more compute power to process all these signals. And so we've started to use cloud-based or virtualized hardware. So, normally, a playout server or a physical server would have a specific function. It would be a graphics box, or it would be an automation system, or a video server. So now we're moving more towards an environment where we have just a massive computing platform with lots of IP connectivity in between and storage, and we can put whatever we want on there. And the way we're choosing to invest in that, because it moves so quickly, is instead of a CapEx-based model, it's an OpEx-based model. So, because, in 5 years, it'll be worthless. And so, that's the job of the compute provider to provide that for us. So they're providing a sort of a generic high, capacity compute. This is another reason, by the way, why we need more power. At our Atlanta facility, we installed one rack of equipment that consumes 13 kilowatts of power. And then, of course, you need another 13 kilowatts of HVAC to keep it from overheating. But this is the way of the future, because the capacity, this one rack can process 500 channels. Now, it can't originate 500 channels, because that takes a lot more horsepower, but it can do the kind of stuff I was talking about earlier. It can switch out a piece of content or whatever. So we're investing in that. We're also investing in the distribution capabilities. So satellite is one, terrestrial is another, and managed fiber, and then the internet. So we very much see a world where, as a packet of video data comes in, somewhere there's a decision made that says the best way of sending this packet is over satellite. Or this packet's only going to one place, and it's replacing something that was missed elsewhere, so we're going to send that terrestrially. And we've got a managed fiber pipe to that place. Or if we've not, then we're going to send it over the internet. And so it's much more integrated infrastructure. And so a lot of time going into network management. So, monitoring and managing the network end to end from when the content arrives to where it gets handed off to the customer.
Sounds exactly what was in the Teleport of Tomorrow report from the dude. Now we know where some of that came from. Yes. And you scared me a little bit with 13 kilowatts in one rack with 500 channels there.
Believe me, it scared me.
So I've got to ask the question.
Someone pulled the power plug.
Exactly. Delta found out what happens when somebody does pull the power plug, and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
So I want each of you to tell me a little bit about what you do about disaster recovery, business continuity, operational resiliency, whatever you call it.
I'll take the first one here. Yeah, the business continuity for our customers is actually a product or service that we offer. We can establish a dedicated uplink on our shared antenna systems there. We can reserve the power. Part of the services, we actually have live content sitting in our teleport through our managed fiber network. So if there's any sort of issues at our customer's uplink facility, then we could do immediate transfer and uplink. We have several of these customers throughout our teleports. We can go a little bit further. SiriusXM actually has installed 4 of their antennas on our facility here. And actually they have a origination play out capability in our facility here in case there's a issue in their Washington facility. They can actually transport people down here, the talking heads, the promos that can actually be played out in our facility here. So that's part of the disaster recovery business continuity that we have. We're talking about power and the infrastructure that we have. I tell my own staff and managers that while the RF equipment, the baseband looks really nice, lots of colors and everything, customers, but it is the cooling, it is the power that really is the lifeblood of the teleport. So we put a lot of effort, a lot of capitalist funding in there to make the RF power systems redundant, they're resilient. We have a couple of different flavors. Over in Germany, they have a pillar flywheel where they don't need batteries for a UPS system. We're in a process of creating a truly A-B power design at the teleports, meaning that a lot of the equipment is dual power corded. So in case there is loss of power, there is a uniquely different power source from the utility company to the separate UPS system to a separate generator, genset. So it's really a dual redundant. And this is some of the lessons learned from working with the broadcasters like George and even Discovery as well. So it is it's an ongoing effort. And land. We talked about being in front of growth. We worked with a lot of our local counties and municipalities to support land approval to use to expand and grow our different antennas as we need them. So that's an ongoing effort as well.
Thank you. George, you want to talk a little bit about
disaster recovery?
Disaster
Yes.
recovery, preventing
Yes,
disaster?
Unfortunately, I'm an expert at this.
Yes.
Yes, power systems, cooling systems are one of the greatest challenges we have had and have faced. That's usually the 3 o'clock in the morning phone call. Is a UPS unit's caught on fire. We actually had a unique problem at our Techwood facility. We had a halon fire system due to a lightning strike. A 200-pound cast iron manifold went flying through a wall in a tech area. Since then, we've replaced all that. But these are the how we get around that is basically we have two redundant two teleports. Either teleport can take all the traffic. We generally balance it between the two. We're also looking at having a disaster recovery facility in New York at our HBO. HBO has a disaster recovery facility at our Campbellton Road facility. They have video servers, total play out, and they're synced with the servers up in New York. So you could, basically if something happens on Long Island, everybody can still watch Game of Thrones.
That's important stuff.
It is very important.
So it's good to know that it's designed so that if one of the facilities were to cease operations for one reason or another.
When we have an A and B power system at both teleports. So we have a generator UPS, and every piece of equipment we have has a redundant power supply.
That's why CNN stays on the air as much
That's
as
right.
it does,
That's why we got really good outage segments.
Yes. Alan, you have a number of teleports around the world.
We do. So it's really more customer dependent in terms of what they want. But we do everything from what I call just belt and braces, bog standard over engineering. So where, for one of our customers in Stamford, we originate all of their channels 5 hours in advance and then put them into a delay server so that if somebody makes an error on air, you can go back and fix it. If Harbour Drive gets washed away because we had to build the wall up because we're right on the harbour, so Hurricane Irene had us within 6 inches of having to shut down because the water, once it goes into the generator room, you're done because there was no power. So if Harbour Drive is unable to operate, we can operate out of our Glenbrook Earth Station completely. And in fact, we often switch when we're doing maintenance. If Glenbrook Earth Station, which is 4 miles away from Harbour Drive and a lot further up a hill, if that's inoperable for whatever reason, then Lino Lakes in Minnesota can take over. So that's one customer. We have another customer in Europe. who have like 25 channels that are distributed all over Europe, we synchronously re-originate everything in Stanford and fiber it back. So you could literally pull the plug on the London facility and they stay on air.
Wow.
But I mean, that's, that's double the cost.
Right, okay.
But it's, for most of these networks, the cost of being off air, if there was a major event, if you took them off air for weeks, days even, it would be, a massively catastrophic business event for them.
Especially during events like the Olympics or...
Well, it financially would be a huge amount of damage. Brand aside, just pure dollars or euros. It would so it's worth it for them. And so we have to be able to provide those services, and therein lies one thing that we certainly learned quickly, which was, if you've got a piece of software that's doing something critical, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to run it on my server, I'm going to have another server. What we found is that very often servers are very reliable; they hardly ever fail. The software, on the other hand, is not reliable. And
you have the same bug on both sides.
So if you've got the same software running on your redundant system, then you've got a problem. You've got a single point of failure, which is the software. So what we try and do is use different software and a different architecture, which is challenging from a workflow perspective. And so, we've been driven more and more towards standardizing the workflow as much as we possibly can, so that you can then replicate it, synchronously and easily wherever you want, and get the kind of reliability and resilience that you need.
So how does the future look as far as helping out with that? I mean, you've already talked about building more generic infrastructures, building virtual machine farms where you can spin up computing power. Will the future be easier from a disaster recovery perspective, or do things like same software make it harder?
In some ways, yes, but in other ways, other challenges pop up when you do that. And one of the biggest ones is security. So now everything's connected, to the internet pretty much. Most vendors perform maintenance on systems by connecting in through the internet, and so there's a security risk there. And security, is confidentiality. So you want to make sure that only the people that you want to read or see information can see it. It's integrity, which is making sure that no one changes it, and availability, which is making sure no one takes it off air. And so we're concerned with all of those with broadcasting. So when you virtualize everything and make it a network, and you make it accessible from anywhere, then you now have a security problem. And if you don't balance it properly, all of the effort you go to create a resilient, one-for-one redundant network is useless when some guy with a laptop takes both of them off at the same time. Yeah. Or worse, as happened to a French broadcaster, changes the content on air, which is really scary.
Yeah.
So we're starting to invest more and more time now in understanding how to make these networks secure, and that's a different problem for most of the engineers that I've worked with in this industry.
That's
They put a big metal gate at the door and say,
right.
You can't come into my teleport.
That used to work.
It used to be great, but now it's a challenge. So, I'll tell you, to satisfy one broadcaster, one of the big four actually, that we uplink and distribute to all of their transmitters, terrestrial transmitters, we have to actually unplug the Ethernet jacks from the management network onto the equipment. it's the only way of satisfying their auditors that they were safe.
Right. Wow, that's tough. It's tough from a vendor trying
Well,
to.
that doesn't work for me in terms of managing the network. There's got to be a better way of doing it than that.
Well, especially if you have part of your redundancy scheme and disaster recovery scheme involves that network talking to another network elsewhere. It doesn't do that when it's unplugged.
But I think to add to that, even, you have smart UPS systems, smart power systems, even the air conditioners are hooked to the internet.
All you have to do is turn the aircon off
Everything
and
in the
you're done.
facilities hooked to the internet.
Yeah.
So, you have that concern.
We have the same challenge with our flight network. It's a closed network, but we have a special security group in our IT that they focus in on the security issues, and they're on top of any sort of breaches of security and everything. And so, sometimes to your point, pulling the cable off or actually having a closed network, it really is the only way. And then continued audit of that to make sure that there's not something that maybe someone plugged into that. So it's ongoing.
Sounds like you need a different type of personnel staff to plan for that and keep up with that. I know when I go look for employees, what it takes to hire somebody now is different than it was 20 years ago. They want really good coffee. I have a supplier of Haitian Blue if you need it.
We still have good, still got to have good coffee.
You gotta have good. They want flexible working. They want other stuff. So I mean, where do you guys go to find people? How hard is it to find people? To attract them, train them, retain them, all that stuff.
I actually go to Encompass.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
we talked about that earlier. So.
yeah, Encompass is a fine organization. We hire a lot of military. They've got a good background. Years ago, you could hire. I explained it to my boss. You could basically buy statues. Now you got to get marble. So you're going to have to be willing to mentor. Of course, all of us, it's been in this industry, somebody mentored us. I mean, somebody took us in. People I work for, it's like, what are you doing here? You have no experience, but I got a good attitude. So that's a lot of it, and people are willing to learn. But the military is a good source. They're still a good source for that. Encompass is a great source. And Intelsat's a great source. So
That's right.
Guys, beware.
Yeah, I'll tag along George's comments. It's a real struggle. It has been. This is, I think, to your point earlier, that it's a shrinking industry. We're challenged by customers not knowing about what satellites are, and even some of the young talent out there have maybe from the military some basic training, basic knowledge, but nothing like walking into our teleports. It's a night and day world. They have the core skills and a good attitude, work ethic. We look for that, and so we put together a training program because we are having such difficulty. And I think it is a really good idea bringing young talent in. They challenge the older staff there. They ask questions. Why are you doing it this way? And so we welcome that. But it is a real challenge. And sometimes they come in for a year or two and then move on to something else. So we take that gamble. So it's an ongoing challenge that we've got. So.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have that challenge. I mean, we have RF engineers, we have network engineers or fiber engineers, and of course we've got broadcast engineers. But really, what you need now is network engineers that understand broadcast video, and RF engineers that understand broadcast video, for at least for our business, and that is really tough. RF engineers, we as an industry, we need to find ways of nurturing new ones, because the old ones are getting older; they're not getting any younger. And I'd like to be able to mentor some of them before I retire. So we can start finding ways of getting them in.
But
so kind of some of the work that the SSPI is doing, I think.
But to expand on that, I mean, that we do have a different skill set. now that we have to have. They do have to have at least a working knowledge of IP, because everything is IP, you know, and everything's interconnected with that. So they have to have the networking skills. I do find it easier to take someone who has RF experience and teach them IP than the other direction, because, you know.
Really?
RF is still a lot of black magic, I'll tell you that.
Well, yes, it is. And like I said, we've got to be willing to mentor, because that knowledge has got to be passed along.
We started mine in our IT department, actually. We took our IT department and said, okay, you have usually a good working knowledge of software and applications. They usually have a good working knowledge of networking. And then you teach them the broadcast workflow and the kind of DNA that they need. The other thing is, it's also, you put a little carrot in front of them and say that, you know, video is by far the most challenging application that you're ever going to have to run on a network or with software. And that's always a good, you know, carrot. But going from IP to RF, it's like in my experience, that's been a really tough challenge.
Yeah.
Because they are such completely different disciplines. You know, software and IP, lots and lots of people know that. Training them up to be broadcast and reliability grade that's one thing. But to find someone that can actually understand an RF operation and understand how the technology works, you know, it's kind of hard to upgrade an SSPI.
Part of it too
I mean,
is you've got to, you know, you've got someone who's worked in the network, you know, IP network center. Now you're sending him out at 3 o'clock in the morning to go kick a motor on an antenna or climb an antenna, because it's, you know, antennas are always going to be big, mechanical, dirty machines, you know.
Grease and dirt don't get along sometimes.
No, and ice, things of that nature.
Yeah, they're a very, very sort of almost unique set of skills.
They are.
And a lot of the broadcasters that operate terrestrial transmitters, they're finding it even more difficult, because they're out there and they basically say you can have one engineer, and that engineer's got to, you know, manage the network, he's got to manage all the broadcast operations, and he's got to manage the transmitter. It's like, wow, you know, that's a pretty skilled person.
Sounds like a business opportunity. So.
We should start a school.
Maybe. I'm going to ask you guys one more question in a minute, but let those people know sitting out there that after I'm done with this question, if you have questions you want to ask these gentlemen, there are a couple mics that we can bring up, and you guys can certainly ask some of those. So while you're thinking about that, I want to ask you a little bit about partners. The Teleport of Tomorrow report done by the WTA certainly had a significant amount of information concerning partners, knowing that George isn't going to set up his own streaming CDN to distribute CNN anytime soon. Seems like partners are very important, and I think we can all generally agree what the future holds at a broad level, and that's like things like video streaming, one-to-one channel distribution, Internet of Things communications, machine-to-machine communications, internet everywhere, personal preferences that follow me wherever I go. Those types of things are definitely what we will be seeing in the future. At least that's what my crystal ball tells me. So what type of partners do you look for, and how do you foster those relationships, initiate those relationships? And tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, that's a really nice question. Well, actually, I guess with partners, of course, you have to be, you know, closely with your transponder providers. You know, us and Intelsat have to work very close together. And I guess in the future, you know, going back to the teleports, I mean, you're going to have to be working a lot more with your IT departments, because I see the infrastructure within teleports being IP. You're not going to have ASI running through a teleport. You're going to have IP. You're going to be feeding everything from a massive router at some point in time. You're going to have IP coming out of your IRDs and going into your modulators. So all of your control systems are going to be IP. So you're going to have that. Is that pretty much what you're looking for here?
That's certainly part of it.
All right then.
Um,
But again, like I say, we have to work very closely with our, especially our transponder partner, the people that provide that.
I think on the business side, and again, I'm more on the hardware, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, but something of the Internet of Things. I was reading an article that by the year 2020, there's supposed to be 20 to 40 billion devices out there that could be reached somehow or another. So I think from a business perspective, we're looking for new technologies. One example is we have partnered a little bit with a company called Kymeta, who has been developing an antenna. Just recently, just a few months ago, we concluded a 8,000-mile trip where they put one of these antennas on a car and traveled around the country. I guess the Navy went 3 times back and forth, 8,000 miles. But it was really to test the from beam to beam, connectivity. They were internet access. They were looking at some data test points on the car, how fast was it traveling, the fuel consumption. So I think from the partner's perspective, from a business is all about the opportunities and the applications. And I think we talked before, Alan mentioned before about where does satellite play into this. So I think we're very open to and hearing a lot of different vendors and even service providers, for that matter, to help bring us to actually maximize the use of the satellites.
What about low Earth orbit satellite partners as well? We haven't talked much about web or.
All right. Well, you mentioned OneWeb, so there is that interoperability, between the fixed GEO and the low Earth orbiting spacecraft. That connectivity, that can go up anywhere in the world and down in another place. So I think that's another game changer, I think, for the satellite industry. And you're right. I think years gone by, some of us might remember a company called Iridium. Maybe it was a little before its time, but I think now with some new technologies on the ground, I think that's really presents a possibility. I think from a teleport perspective of that is that there might be a lot more gateways located throughout the world to maybe make that connection, especially passing in between the spacecraft. So I think it's being open-minded and reaching out and being receptive of it.
Intelsat's an investor in OneWeb, is that right?
That's what I understand. Yep.
Okay. Alan?
Well, satellite operators, of course, so we enjoy a very close relationship with Intelsat, and we work with others as well. So the satellite operators, but the telcos, so the big fiber providers, because a lot of those big fiber providers also happen to be becoming biggest CDNs, and so we partner with those, and then of course we partner with a lot of our software vendors on the broadcast side. But it's the model that we're partnering with them under that is important. Where these are not traditional vendor supplier relationships anymore. Mm-hmm. They're much more complicated than that, and they need to evolve. And so they're more based on revenue shares than they are based on, I'll pay you X and you deliver me Y, because X and Y are changing, and so you need partners that are going to work with you to create the end-to-end service. So we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how best to partner with those people. And software vendors, in particular, this is an alien model to them, and some of them are more flexible than others. Roger. No, they are. Roger has been very flexible and understanding in that regard.
There's new exploration and technology as well as business relationships, all of that.
and this is the most rapidly evolving area for me is getting the software to evolve with the business, and it needs to be virtual. It needs to be you need to be able to spin it up quickly, and if it doesn't work, get rid of it and do something else. Massive investments in software that you're then going to hope to write off over 5 years are pretty much gone, because I don't know what's going to be happening in 5 years, so I don't know whether the software is going to do what I need it to do. So it's that's definitely something that needs to be worked on. And so from a teleport perspective, it really is how do you stay relevant to what the needs of the customers in the market are? It's because they're changing and they're not going to wait for us.
And sometimes they're not sure what they need because the future is changing.
That's absolutely true. They're in just exactly the same position as we are. So, again, you try and figure out a way of adding on to what they've already got to evolve their service rather than give them a new one. Because satellite's going to be relevant for television distribution for years to come, and therefore teleports are going to be relevant for television.
But I think the technology is changing so fast. I mean, going back to what you said originally, when I started working teleport, we had 4 networks and VC2. I mean, now you went to MPEG 2 and you got QPSK, and now you're MPEG 4 and QPSK, and now you're 4K, and now you're 16 APSK, and so equipment's getting smaller, but it's getting smarter.
Well, it's
and we don't know what technology is going to be available tomorrow.
when Crystal goes into our customers and installs a control system, it's these types of customers where you just can't take their service down and say, hey, we'll have it back up in 2 weeks. And so we're kind of, we've always worked in that mode where you're changing the tire while the car's moving. Somebody described it as replacing a jet engine while it's still flying. It's that type. As we look at some of these evolutions, you still have to keep those billions of dollars flowing through your network and add on to it and grow it during that same time.
But back to what you said about partners, they have to also understand your business, what your needs are also. So that's working very closely, especially with your M&C systems.
Yeah, right.
That'll be second coffee cup. Okay.
All right. We'll get you a whole box down there.
Oh, thanks, man.
So I want to ask folks on the floor, any questions that came to mind? Alan, just wait for a microphone to come up, and then we got a few up here as well. Right next to you. Or...
Thank you. So in a kind of hypothetical, if you'd just acquired a new business, acquired a teleport, and you're looking to refurbish it, kind of what sort of areas would you be looking to invest capital in, and in what kind of percentage?
For me, actually we're looking at shutting down and consolidating some of them because the company grew by acquisition, and so we have a lot of duplication of entities. So we closed down our Andretta facility in Los Angeles last year and moved a lot of the services to Stanford and Atlanta. But that's not necessarily should be viewed as a negative. It's actually a positive because it makes the network more efficient. And so what we did was we actually reused a lot of the antennas and the capex, the transmitters. We actually shipped all of the transmitters, of about 12 of them, to our Buenos Aires facility because in Latin America, it takes months to get equipment in there. So we shipped it all down there in anticipation of them needing it. So they did not then have to invest capex. So we were trying to sort of take the capex that we'd already invested, or someone else invested prior to Encompass acquiring them, and then redistribute it or try and be efficient with it. Because the other thing is that we're able to operate most teleports now pretty much virtually, if we want to. So, our Lino Lakes facility is actually our most reliable facility in the entire company. And the reason that is because it's a very well-engineered facility. There's lots of investment in the past, and the people that operate that facility have been there for years and know every nut and bolt and screw in there, and that place just runs. So it's not so much reinvesting. It's redistributing and consolidating, I would say.
We're kind of like Robert. Alan here. When we do consider another teleport, we actually do a complete analysis, evaluation on the facility. Oh, 1, 2, 3. I feel like American Idol up here.
Rock and roll.
Start singing.
Do 2 free bird.
It does go back to the infrastructure. We actually take a look at that first. Our Riverside teleport, we bought from a private owner when we first set it up, and we spent several millions of dollars with the power, HVAC infrastructure. A lot of times these teleports are maybe have aged. Again, the capital investment to keep them updated is a heavy price tag. So what we've discovered is that, if we're going to, and we have considered other teleports, is taking a look at the equipment, the care of it, the age of it, the performance of it, because that is a very heavy capital investment in order to stand up a teleport to the standards that we have and for our customers. So, good question.
Jack's got one, and then Alan, do you?
I got a question for you. So, the average age in this room is a little over 40.
Really? It's not young.
There's an article in The Economist today that Netflix has 35% of the primetime market distribution for video. How are you planning on attracting new talent to this industry that founded and built the distribution of television and video across the world?
I can still give you my coffee supplier.
Well, it's a little bit of what I said earlier, and I really mean this. It's give them the challenge. This is a challenging industry to work in. Video is definitely the hard. The internet was never designed for video.
Yeah.
In fact, I once said at a meeting that if I was given the challenge of designing a network that was least suitable for distributing video reliably, I would be hard pressed to come up with something better than the internet. But it is what it is. And so the challenge is, how do we make that application work in that environment? And how do we do it in a way that adds satellite, as an essential component, plugging the gaps that the internet has? And so, it's an engineering challenge. Engineers get excited by challenges. So I like to attract people by giving them interesting problems to solve. I don't know about anyone else in the room, but I've worked for a bank, and I've worked for a media company, and I've worked for a satellite operator, and I've worked for a services company, and a telco. And the most interesting jobs that I had were not necessarily the best paid.
No.
In fact, the best paid job that I ever had was at a bank, and it was the job that I hated the most. And so I think you've got to attract people by giving them relevant, interesting problems. This is an industry that is exciting. It's it's challenging. It's got everything. It's got the excitement. It's got the technical movement of and change, and it gives people the ability to solve real problems that get them the kind of recognition that they look for. So I think that's how you go about it. I mean, and Netflix can do that too, but Netflix can't do everything. Netflix can do some of it.
Yeah, we've 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, not working. All right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's after the show here. We've recently had discussions about that, about how do we change part of Intelsat's image with new talent. We're, again, not just on the teleport side challenged with, but we're challenged with getting engineers in because they just don't know about the industry. So recently we had a HR discussion with Georgia Tech and their group of people who are helping to maybe spread the word to actually support the internship, at Intelsat here, and also well as at Tyson. So I think it's a challenge for us as an industry, where we're like a well-kept secret, and we're not really advertised that well. But I think it is going in to the colleges, to the universities, spreading who we are and partnering. Speaking of partners before, actually partnering with those universities to help bring in new talent, and I think Robert mentioned before about sharing the leadership programs of WTA and SSPA, and it's amazing that they don't know about us. So I think it's actually trying to open the doors, and the universities all over the country, I think, are willing to do that to help their students continue their careers anyway. So.
We got about 5 minutes.
Sorry, and I won't take almost none of it. From the work that SSPI did, the answer to that question is basically we have to change our habits, and we all know how easy that is. But for years, for decades, this industry basically was on the receiving end of an assembly line in the military and in broadcast organizations that made ready-made people to work in our industry, and all we had to do was sit there at the end of the line and catch them. Those days are gone. The military is not as big as it was. The broadcasters are not hiring as many people and therefore losing as many people. So we've now got to pick up our act and go and get them. Go and get them. It's as simple as that, but it's also being a habit very hard.
The nice thing is some of the best companies in the world that get messages out to the public are in this industry. So
yeah, the media companies.
Jack, yes.
I just wanted to add. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add the same thing what Robert was saying there. We have to realize. I know it's sacrilege in a teleport conversation, but there's more to the teleport nowadays. It's that we're in that whole telecommunications ecosystem now. So we need to get that RF. We talked about it earlier. It's hard to find, but we need these IP people. We need, further down the value chain in the media. We need to have terrestrial people understand what we have to do, and we all have to get real that we're not going to get the RF people we thought we used to have. We're going to have to train people. We have to pull them out of wireless. We're going to have to steal from, we talked about earlier, Robert mentioned, we steal from each other. You know what? Now we need to steal from Verizon, and we need to steal from AT&T, and we need to steal from everybody else. And we really need to face the reality that satellite is just going to be another part of that ecosystem. So when we go to these young people, we are out there. We're distributing media. We're being philanthropic to people that are not connected. We are distributing you globally, and that's the message we need to get out to everybody.
Jack, real quick, and then
2 points.
lady.
One is we talk about getting to the universities, and we talked about going, there's the engineer here and so forth. Do you know there's absolutely no education in this country? There is no university, college that's actually teaching how to be technicians. The people that you need to come into, they know how to do this. It does not exist in this country. It's amazing. So it's a problem, really. The second point, I consider this the elephant in the room. We talk about the teleport of the future. 20 years ago, teleport, that was the way you got video from your network, from anywhere. You want to get it around the country, you had to use satellite. That's all that there was. Now we see internet, fiber, people being able to get 50, 60, 100 megabits in their home. And so everything's changing. So there's a challenge. How do you think the business is going to change to stay alive, to keep viable? I mean, there'll always be a need, but to keep economically viable with the fact that so many people now can get fiber so easily and so cheaply. I just want to address that.
I mean, we have to evolve, and we have to recognize that, but at the same time, we have to also recognize that satellite is in my opinion, is going to be a major contributor to video distribution for years to come, and for the simple reason that it's still by far the most reliable. One thing that I found when I started playing with distributing video over the internet, to an iPhone or an iPad or an Apple TV box, is the delay. All right, so one broadcaster just said to me, and they asked me the question, so how long does it take from the video to get from the output of the video server to this additional screen? And the answer is about a minute. It's like, and they went, that's not live. And not only is it a minute, but it's not exactly a minute. It could be 50 seconds for you, and it could be a minute for me in the same room, watching the same program. Satellite, quarter of a second, boom, you're there. The encoding now takes longer than the satellite link. And so there are going to be a mixture of, the fact is, there's multiple ways of distributing video. There's lots of devices at the other end. So what we've got to do is figure out what the optimal way of delivering every time. And so it's like a packet by packet basis. As it comes in, which way would you want to send this packet? Do you want to send it over the satellite, or do you want to send it terrestrially? Do you want to delay it? Do you want to speed it up?
Do you need a quick response?
And for us, it's figuring out how to optimize the distribution, and satellite will play a role in that. It won't be, if you oversimplify it and say, satellite's dead, everyone's going to be watching it over the internet. I don't believe that for a second, because for a start, the whole model changes. Most of our customers make most of their revenue from distributing via satellite. And they spend most of their thought, and energy going forward in trying to figure out how to deliver it via the internet. But they make no money doing that, or very little money. And so they're going to optimize that by putting it all together and treating it as one, which is what I think they should do.
I've been listening, and I think I've heard something, and I think you hit upon it. This is what I've been listening to: the reliability, the absolute reliability of the satellite. And I listened to Encompass talk about multiple locations, and Intelsat multiple locations with power backups, and we can go here. And George, you've got 2 uplink sites separated, and you're talking about BCP, business continuity planning, to move you to HBO. And I see the teleport moving from that single teleport concept, I have a couple dishes and so forth, to that conglomerate where you have 5 or 6 sites all over the country. They can all hit that same satellite. If the tornado or the hurricane comes through this city, we switch operations here. And you manage a number of stations. And if your facility in Atlanta gets hit by the tornado, your control of those stations just switches seamlessly. And hopefully
I'd like to
seamlessly.
think it does.
Yes. I'm giving you a plug here. I mean, come on. But that's where I see somewhat the future of the teleport, the ability to offer the service to say, no matter what happens,
Yeah,
you're going to be up because we can give you multiple locations and we go to the same bird. The end user doesn't know where that signal is coming from. It doesn't have to.
A while ago, I asked Bill Tilson what happens to those small teleport operators, and I think his response was something along the line of they go out of business or get acquired. So we got time for one more question back here, and then
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is this on? I understand all the need for redundancy and bits and cooling towers and all that stuff, but I am a user of DirecTV, and I've been for about 10 years or so, and every time I'm watching my favorite shows, it rains. So
that's why I like C-band.
That's why we.
So
use
what are you
C-band,
guys
yes.
doing about that? Let's be practical now.
We pray a lot.
There are certain laws of physics that these gentlemen can't.
God
can't
and
get
Well,
around.
yeah, I mean, people are talking about, higher modulation formats. Well, this is the penalty you pay.
Mm-hmm.
And
You get, Shannon's theorem and, the basic laws of physics dictate.
and Alan touched on it on a solution is what path does this packet or do these packets need to take? And we need a system smart enough to know that it's going to be raining soon, so we're going to reroute those DirecTV packets terrestrially instead of KU.
And DirecTV, by the way, and I'm a recent user of DirecTV. Their TV Everywhere service means that I can watch pretty much anything that I can see on the satellite over the internet. It's just a minute later, and some of the content has to get chopped out because they don't have the rights for it. But I think that'll change over time, and it also brings other benefits. I can sort of set my DVR at home. I can download stuff I've DVR'd potentially onto my iPhone because it's all part of one network. And I think that's just exactly what Roger said, is by using terrestrial when it's there, and when it's the only path available, you can back up the fact that the satellite's not. And the satellite's not there on the uplink for the vast majority of the time. It's like hugely reliable. But localized downlink when there's when you're going through a rain cell is gonna take any link out ultimately. And so if you've got terrestrial connectivity, someone said 50, 100 megabits into the home, no problem. I can send all those megabits terrestrially to you. It's going to cost me a lot more for the period of time that it's raining, but in reality, that's peanuts compared to the user experience. So that's how that problem gets fixed.
And you also have to
It
worry
gets
about
fixed by a hybrid satellite terrestrial network. It's there now.
You just have to.
It's just
tolerate
not
the
as
1 minute
it's just
delay.
not seamless.
And you
It's
still
just
have to worry about the guy with the backhoe in the neighborhood. Yes.
backhoe.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, audience, and let's give these guys a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Dick, come on up and you want to close us out and grab some desserts on the way out. What's that? What's he telling me?
I have no. Speak louder.
I do have a few.
Give them things.
I have a few goodie bags for a couple of these gentlemen. So
Go ahead. Everybody, once again, let's hear it for our panel. As I told one person earlier, that those people who registered and did not show up tonight will only live to regret it. This was a great program, terrific panelists, and good questioning, Roger. Thank you. And again, thanks to Crystal for hosting this WTA event. So there we go. And make sure if you didn't, make sure you signed in. And there is some desserts and some coffee and stuff. So help yourself. We have another 10 minutes in the room before the price goes up. So and then we'll see you all later. Thank you.